Hello, welcome to the Money Bites podcast, where we talk about crypto, personal finance, and everything in between. My name is Lulu, and today we'll be talking about the history of money from cowries to crypto. If you're joining us for the first time, please make sure you like, subscribe, and also share with your friends. Let's go. The history of money and fintech is quite interesting. It's something that many of us have never really considered, even though we spend money every day. I'm very certain that your first encounter with money will have been when maybe your uncle or your auntie came to your house and dashed you 5,000 naira, and your mom said, "No, bring it, Junior, let me keep it for you." You know, so we've been spending money all our lives, and many of us have never really considered the history of money, the current monetary system that we run through, and how it affects our daily lives. Today, we will be going through this topic. We're talking about the history of money, the history of fintech, the problems with the current monetary systems, cryptocurrency, and how it can solve all of these problems. Money is an arbitrary concept, right? It's a construct made by men, and it has as much value as we ascribe to it. Money became necessary with advancement in trade. And how did we get to this point with the current monetary system? Well, humanity started very, very primitive, right? We were living in caves, and we never had any business to do with each other. We're just gathering and hunting, really. And then humanity began to progress into a stage where we started farming, subsistence agriculture, and then we started building villages and cities and towns around our farming environments. And that led us to start doing trade between ourselves, between cities, between nations. So trade necessitated a means of exchange. Initially, we were exchanging goods and services by barter. So what that meant was that if you have like maybe a cow, you can exchange it for maybe a field of corn or whatever. I mean, back then, the things you exchange was determined by the intended use. So the value of your exchange was determined by the intended use of what you expect to receive from your counterparty. As trade got much more sophisticated, right, and as much as people started traveling around, moving around, and globalization basically, we needed to have a more standardized way of doing trade. And then comes in money. So the first time we had experience with money in Africa, West Africa precisely, probably be with cowries, right? And then we started migrating into other more standardized versions of money. The first forms of currencies were tokens with assigned values that were issued by kings. They were in form of clay, they were in form of salt, they were in form of animal skins, and other variety of items that people used to identify money. The first coins were made in Lydia in 600 BC, where they standardized the concept of money, and then which actually made them the wealthiest states in their time. They were the first incarnation of what you call reserve currency because everybody wanted to use their monetary system, and then it made them very, very wealthy. It's very, very akin to the current petrodollar and reserve currency of the status of the US dollar. We'll talk about that more in future episodes. You want to know why the US dollar affects our lives, even though we have our own local currency. So make sure you look forward to that. The barter system came with its own deficiencies, and also the other forms of monetary systems that were created were not really up to par. So people were using things like salt, people were using things like animal skins, and a whole lot of other items that were not durable. So many of them would spoil over time, and then they wouldn't really be able to hold enough value. Remember, the real concept of money is a store of value, right? And when these products or these items that were used to store money were not living up to their standards, people needed a different approach, and that was what necessitated the creation of coins. The first coins, like I said, was created in China with copper, and then the first how do I call it, legal or government or empire backed coin was created in Lydia in 600 BCE. Lydia was a Greek empire, or what I call it, a Greek city state, and they were the wealthiest in their time because of this system that they created. The coin system elevated the token system by using sophisticated materials like copper, gold, and silver to mint coins. These materials were able to hold their value because they were very, very durable. They were really, really not easy to destroy. And then again, they were also precious metals, specifically gold and silver. So when coins were minted back then, if someone gave you a pound and said this is a pound was actually equal to its weight in gold. So a coin was equal to its weight in gold. And this really revolutionized the monetary system and also enhanced the ability of money to store value as a store of value. As time went by, technology advanced, and we had the invention of paper in China as well. When paper was invented in China, it got people thinking, and then they decided, wow, we could actually make paper money. And that was how paper money was invented in China in 11 BCE. So, with the advent of coins and paper money, government started taking notice of these technologies and they really started getting involved. The Chinese Tang Dynasty was the first to issue paper money, right? In terms of as a use of exchange. Also, we had imperial currencies like the rupiah that was introduced in India, and a whole lot of other currencies that were introduced in Southeast Asia as at the time. Due to globalization and trade, people from Europe started traveling to the east to involve in trade with the Chinese, the Indians, and other cultures in Asia. And this trade introduced them to the monetary systems that were already much more advanced in Asia as at the time. And they took back these learnings back to Europe, and then they started creating their own forms of money as well. Um, the first banknotes was created in 1694 in England, and a lot of other countries started adopting the use of coins, the use of paper for money. These banknotes were backed by the government, and then the government needed to have the equivalent of those banknotes and those coins in gold in their reserves. So that was how money was created, essentially. However, this interesting system of money was going to come to an end in 1917 with the Nixon shock, where President Nixon of the United States decided that it wasn't necessary to back money with gold anymore, and it was just okay for the markets to decide. And that is the reason why we have money as it is today. President Nixon's policy shift brought about the erasure of the gold standard. And what this meant was that the central banks had much more control of the money in the banks, and they could actually print as much money as they wanted. They could actually raise interest rates as they liked. They could actually do a lot of maneuvers with money. This actually led to some technological advancements with money. You know, the credit card system came out of this. A lot of other financial technology that we enjoy today came out of this. But the history of actual fintech predates this. Fintech, as many people would like to believe, started sometimes in the 80s, but I would like to disagree. Fintech actually started in the 17th century with the invention of the telegraph. Before the invention of the telex and people using telex to transmit financial transactions, people used to actually have to carry cash with them if they were traveling for a business trip. So they would have to actually carry, say they wanted to go and buy maybe um, fabric from China. They would actually have to carry the amount of money they needed for that transaction all the way with them to China. Remember back then there were no airlines, probably there were ships, there were no secure means of transportation that we have today. So what that meant was that they always got robbed. Even if they went by sea, they were pirates. If they went by road, maybe in their caravans, they got robbed. And there was a need to solve this problem. In comes a man called Rothschild and the family. So what they did was they created banks where, or what I call it, credit houses where you can deposit your gold or whatever money you have while you're traveling to maybe somewhere like China or maybe somewhere like in the Middle East where you're going for a business trip. And then they have branches set up in all of these countries. So when you get there, when you deposit your money in somewhere like Frankfurt, they give you what they call a credit note to show, look, this guy has £1,000 deposited with us. So when he gets to China, he redeems that £1,000 with a credit note. So this was the first form of banking and trade finance that we had back then. But with the invention of the telegraph and the telex, it meant that people could actually easily do the same thing having to without having to resort to such archaic methods. What it meant that you could actually send money to someone in maybe you live in New York and you want to send money to somebody in Los Angeles, you could actually do the same thing within a day. You don't have to take the actual physical copy of your credit notes and travel all the way to Los Angeles for you to redeem it. So that was the first form of fintech. That was the first way money was being transferred from one point to the other. And this was actually invented by Western Union, the same Western Union that we know about today and we still use. The telex system is actually still in use up to today. Mostly, the system has been revamped into something like Swift and a whole lot of other transaction systems, but it's still the same basic concept that we use. If you want to send money from Nigeria to US today, it's probably still the same system that you use. If you want to, maybe your relative in America wants to remit money to you, it's still the very same system that we use. So what Western Union did was they actually created a lot of undersea cables, to be able to do international transactions like they were doing in America before. And that's how international transactions and financial transactions became started to expand. This was the actual beginning of fintech. And then, of course, with the advent of the internet technology and a lot of other technologies that have come out since then, fintech has actually grown. Fintech is basically the concept of transmitting financial transactions over technology platforms. So using software, cloud services, cryptocurrencies as well. These are all forms of fintech. The monetary system has actually advanced humanity, right? It has actually moved humanity from the Stone Ages to where we are. There are still a lot of issues with the current monetary systems. I mean, one of the major issues we have is a lack of trust. Remember, we talked about money being backed by gold. Today we no longer have the gold standard, which means that the government can print money as much as they like, right? So we have that problem in Nigeria. We have that problem everywhere. Current global recession that we currently have all over the world is actually as a result of money printing, not solely as a result of money printing, but that's one of the major causes. Also, remember the financial recession in 2008, which was caused by predatory lending of certain banks like JP Morgan and Lehman Brothers. These banks actually created predatory lending systems by giving out subprime loans. We'll talk about lending subprime loans and how loans are structured in another episode. But for now, this is part of the reasons why a lot of people lack trust in the current monetary system. Also, there is a lot of financial inequality and exclusion that we currently experience with the current monetary system. In 1820, the ratio between the rich and the poor was about 3 to 1, but as of 1990, that ratio has gone up to 6 to 1. So there are six poor people to one rich person. Basically, that's what it means. And this is part of the fallout of the current monetary system that we run. Another major problem we have with the current monetary system is scalability. You know, if you're traveling, you need to maybe you want to go to the UK, for instance, now, or you want to relocate now. A lot of people are relocating out of the country, and you want to relocate. It means that you probably have to sell everything you have and convert it to maybe cash. If you're going to do that, remember that you are not a British citizen. So when you get there, it will be very difficult to open a bank account. So how do you transfer your assets from one point to the other? This is a major problem that we have with the current monetary system. Also, there's limited privacy, with the current financial system. All of these problems actually can be solved with one simple technology, the blockchain, cryptocurrencies. Even though Bitcoin, the first cryptocurrency, was created in 2009, crypto actually has a very long and sometimes painful history. It actually started way back in 1989 with the invention of the internet. People started feeling like, look, wow, this internet thing, we can actually use it to do a lot more than just sending messages and cute pictures of cats. We can actually use it to send money. We can actually use it as a means of transactions, communications, and payments. The main drivers of this ideology were called cypherpunks, right? We can't really talk about the history of crypto without talking about cypherpunks. Cypherpunk movement basically is a movement of people that believe that we need to encourage widespread of strong cryptography and privacy enhancing technologies as a means of communication and payments. That's the major concept behind the idea of cypherpunks, and actually, is the major concept behind crypto. There are many conversations and ideas on how this technology should work. Some thought it should be private, some thought it should be open and accessible for everyone, and some thought it could actually be both. These discussions were held on a lot of forums, a lot of websites or discussion panels, and all of that. And Satoshi Nakamoto was one of the lead voices in these discussions. Satoshi invented Bitcoin and ensured that it was able to do both of these things. It was private as much as open. It was private in the sense that I could do a transaction with somebody and nobody would know that it was me. It was anonymous, but everybody would be able to see what the transaction was. That was the idea behind Bitcoin. After so much debates and conversations around the most efficient way to implement this technology, the community finally settled down on what we know today as a peer-to-peer system of electronic cash system where people could exchange value anonymously and transparently while securing their privacy as well, rather than using a central authority like a central bank. There is always a lot of misconception between cryptocurrencies and blockchains. These are actually two different things. Blockchain is actually the platform, while crypto is actually the product. So you can call blockchain something like the internet and crypto something like Facebook or an application built on the internet. So the blockchain is actually a ledger, a digital ledger that mimics what you have in real life situations, right? So what it means is for finance and accounting system, you need to have a ledger that records transaction history. In the current monetary system, this is achieved using databases and all of this within a centralized authority. But with blockchain, you don't need to have a centralized authority because the system is maintained by different nodes and completely decentralized. What this means is that no single authority has control over the network. This makes it function as a secure decentralized database. Meanwhile, cryptocurrencies are digital currencies that are not tied to any government or any bank. They use the blockchain technology to make electronic cash transactions between two different users. Another way cryptocurrencies solve the problem of fintech and money is that it democratizes money management. One of the major use cases of the blockchain is cryptocurrencies, and it allows you to hold your money without a bank. So, if you purchase a crypto like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, or whatever crypto, you can choose to hold that crypto asset in your own wallet, right? So, what this means is that when you hold it in your own wallet, you hold the cryptographic key to that wallet, and nobody else on it has access to that wallet. Nobody can seize it, nobody can confiscate it, nobody can authorize a transaction without your say so. And this is actually one of the major concepts that we built our platform Quiver on, right? We want people to have 100% control over their money, over their assets. You can take your money with you wherever you want to go at any point in time. It solves the scalability problem or the portability problem of money as well. So, like I was talking about someone who maybe wanted to relocate to America and then he liquidates all his assets in Nigeria, sells his properties and all of that. Maybe everything is worth about $100,000. It's very, very difficult for you to move that kind of money from Nigeria to America using the current monetary system. But with cryptocurrencies, with platforms like our platform Quiver, you would actually be able to do that within a minute or two. So this is one of the major way that crypto solves the problems of money and fintech. So that brings us to the end of today's conversation, right? We talked about how money began as a way of standardizing trade between peoples, between cities, within communities, states, countries, and all of that. We talked about fintech and how it began as a way of using software and technology to facilitate transactions over the internet. And also, we talked about cryptocurrencies as a solution to the problems created by money and the current financial system or the current monetary system. So, in our next episode, we'll be talking about stablecoins. What are they? Why do we need them? Why do we say they are the future? When, of course, we're saying cryptocurrencies are meant to replace the current monetary system. So why do we need stablecoins? We'll talk about this and more in the next episode. This episode of the Money Bites podcast was brought to you by Quiver Finance INC. Follow us to learn more about how to do more with less. Thank you.